They never expected him to rise. When they shut the doors on him, cold, firm, and final, they believed they had made their decision. A quiet rejection, a standard email, a line that read, "We regret to inform you," followed by the automated wishes for success elsewhere. But what they didn't know was that they weren't rejecting just a student that day. They were rejecting history in motion. They were turning away a spirit sculpted in fire, molded in faith, and carried by dreams that refused to die. He was just 18 then, a young black student with grades that sparkled like a well-written legacy and a heart full of hope that could have powered cities. He had spent nights under flickering lights, reading, rewriting, revising, doing everything he could to reach the expectations this world set on shoulders like his. He wasn't just smart, he was extraordinary. Yet, when his name appeared on that rejection list, it sent a message not only to him, but to every young black soul who had dared to dream too big. You are not one of us. You are not enough. But God whispered something different. And when heaven speaks, the world takes time to listen. Because rejection is never the end. It's simply a divine delay. And this young man, he understood that. He didn't fall apart. He didn't let bitterness consume him. He didn't run to social media to scream injustice, although it would have been justified. Instead, he whispered a prayer. Then he rose, and he walked a path of purpose. He enrolled in another college, one that wasn't his first choice, but one that became the fire where his mettle was tested. He worked harder than anyone else in the room. While others partied, he built. While others rested, he refined. He created things that professors didn't even understand. He spoke with a clarity that silenced lecture halls. He built apps that solved real-world problems. He conducted research that made national headlines. And above all, he mentored. He gave. He uplifted. But the ones who rejected him, they didn't see that. Not yet. You see, God works in seasons. And some harvests take longer because the fruit is destined to be sweeter than others can even imagine. 5 years passed. He was 23. And that same prestigious college, where they once couldn't find a place for him, was now in trouble. Their innovation labs were failing. Their enrollment was slipping. Their student diversity was criticized. The world was evolving, but they were falling behind. And then someone remembered him, not as the rejected student, but as the genius who had risen elsewhere. The builder, the innovator, the speaker, the young man who had now been featured in magazines, tech conferences, and government summits. And suddenly, the same college that once said, "We regret to inform you," sent him another letter. But this one didn't start with regret. It started with respect. "Dear Mr. Jordan, we have followed your exceptional work over the past few years. We believe your insights could transform the future of our institution. We would be honored if you'd consider joining our university as a guest lecturer and innovation advisor." Imagine that. The same gates that once closed on him, now wide open. The same voices that once overlooked him, now begging for his wisdom. The same institution that said no when he was 18, now pleading for his yes at 23. He paused, not because of pride, but because of purpose. He wasn't the same boy who once waited desperately for their approval. He was a man now, a man built by rejection, strengthened by hardship, and led by a higher voice. He accepted the offer, but not for validation. He did it to be the face they never saw coming. He did it for every student who was told, "You don't belong here." He did it to sit in the room, not as a student, but as a voice of transformation. Because when God elevates you, no system can contain you. And when the world turns its back, heaven turns the stage toward you. So if you're watching this and you've been rejected, don't bow your head in defeat. Because the same doors that shut today might be the ones opening wide for you tomorrow. Not to walk through as a seeker, but to return as the answer they never expected. This is just the beginning of what happened next. He walked through those gates again. But this time, he wasn't carrying a backpack full of textbooks and hope. He walked in with poise, vision, and presence that turned heads. Not as an applicant, but as the invited. The halls that once felt too elite for someone like him were now echoing with murmurs of his name. Professors who once skimmed his application now stood in line to hear him speak. Students who once would have been his classmates now watched in awe as he took the stage to lead, to teach, to shift perspectives. You see, something powerful happens when someone returns to the place that once rejected them. They don't return to prove a point. They return to redeem the moment. He began his talk that day not with anger, not with pride, but with truth. "I remember this place," he said, eyes scanning the room. "5 years ago, I walked these grounds in my dreams. I had imagined the classroom I'd sit in, the professors I'd meet, the conversations I'd have. But that door closed before I ever got the chance to touch it. Silence. I didn't know then that rejection would be the redirection God needed to elevate me. And suddenly, he wasn't just delivering a lecture. He was delivering a divine message through experience. A message of hope, of resilience, of what can happen when you don't allow no to define your worth." In the weeks that followed, his influence wasn't just felt in the classroom. It was felt across campus culture. He spoke to minority student groups, empowering them with his story. He challenged outdated policies that kept certain communities underserved. He helped build inclusive tech programs, offering scholarships and internships to brilliant minds that were often overlooked. He was rewriting the playbook. The same systems that once operated on bias and bureaucracy now had to reckon with the living proof of what they had nearly missed out on. Faculty members who used to represent rigidity began attending his sessions to learn what real education looks like. Transformation, not just tradition. And for the first time in years, the university's board started reshaping their vision. Not from the top down, but from the ground up. Inspired by a young man who was once turned away, but never turned bitter. But here's where the story takes a deeper turn. After a few months, he came across internal documents through a faculty member who trusted him. And what he found broke his heart. His rejection wasn't based on academics. His scores were beyond acceptable. He met the criteria. He was on the short list. But the final decision was made by a group of senior faculty who labeled his application a risky fit. Too driven. May not integrate well. Questionable long-term contribution. In simpler terms, they didn't believe someone like him belonged in a place like this. It wasn't about his ability. It was about their bias. It was never about whether he was good enough. It was about whether they were ready enough. But instead of being crushed by this truth, he used it. He gave a talk titled, "Risky Fit: Why Systems Fear What They Don't Understand." He exposed the unspoken patterns that led to exclusion, not with vengeance, but with vision. He told the truth that many had felt but never dared say aloud. And people listened, because this wasn't anger. It was accountability wrapped in love. His voice wasn't just a spark anymore. It became a flame. The college couldn't ignore it. They issued a formal apology, not just to him, but to every student in the past 20 years who had faced rejection through the same quiet discrimination. They formed a new review board. They launched an anonymous review system to check bias. They even named a new scholarship after him for underrepresented youth in innovation. The irony? He once begged them for a chance. Now they honor his name in their halls. That's not just a comeback. That's divine reversal. Because when God exalts someone, no system, no gate, no panel, no protocol can stand in the way. So what happens next? Does he stay at the college? Does he forgive them fully? What does he build now that he's at the top? You'll see, the story isn't done yet. He's not just teaching them now. He's building something greater. When the university extended their formal apology, cameras were flashing, the press was watching, and faculty sat with nervous faces hoping for redemption. But he didn't gloat. He didn't mock. He didn't even demand more. He stepped up to the podium, took a breath, and simply said, "Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about freeing yourself from what could have broken you, but didn't." And just like that, he reminded everyone in that room. He had never been just a student. He was a mirror reflecting back to the system what it tried to ignore. That rejecting someone for who they are does not erase who God created them to become. He forgave, but he didn't forget, because forgetting would mean allowing the system to pretend it never happened. He wanted change, not just apology. And that's what made him powerful. Once news of his return and the college's public turnaround spread, doors opened like floodgates. Companies that once never responded to his internship applications were now offering him roles with full freedom to lead. Government agencies reached out for consultation. Tech giants offered him seven-figure contracts to bring innovation, inclusion, and strategy into their outdated frameworks. But perhaps most stunning of all, several other Ivy League institutions who had once denied him also reached out, not just to apologize, but to offer him honorary doctorates and seats on advisory boards. It was surreal. He was now in a position to choose who he wanted to build with and who he would leave behind. Instead of jumping into any of the offers, he decided to build something of his own. He founded an organization called the Reframed Initiative, a global platform designed to mentor, fund, and elevate brilliant young minds who had been overlooked by traditional systems. The mission was simple. We don't find talent. We uncover the treasure that institutions were too blind to see. Within the first year, they supported over 200 students with full scholarships, tech training, and internship placements across the U.S., Africa, and parts of Southeast Asia. But didn't stop there. He started a podcast where he interviewed others with similar stories, people who were once rejected but now led revolutions in their fields. He created curriculums for high schools that helped students understand how to turn failure into fuel. He even trained school boards and university review panels on how to root out unconscious bias from their admission processes. To every young person watching from a small room, feeling like the world doesn't see your worth. To every student who opened a rejection letter with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes. To every parent who wondered if their child's dreams would be crushed before they ever got a chance to shine. He had one message. Rejection isn't always about you. Sometimes it's about what the world isn't ready to receive yet. But just because they weren't ready then, doesn't mean your time won't come. He urged them to keep building, to sharpen their craft, to stay humble, stay bold, and stay faithful. Because the same doors that once closed on you might one day open. Not to invite you in, but to follow you. Months after all this had unfolded, he received one final call. It was from the same university president who had signed off on his initial rejection 5 years ago. This time, the voice on the phone was different, less formal, more human. "I wanted to thank you," the president said, "not just for accepting our apology, but for showing us what leadership really looks like. We were wrong, and you didn't just correct us, you transformed us." There was silence on the other end. Then, the president added, "We'd like to offer you the role of Dean of Innovation and Equity, a permanent seat to build the future of how we evaluate, teach, and uplift the next generation. It's yours if you want it." He sat quietly after the call ended, not out of shock, but reverence, because deep down, he remembered the day he stood in that empty room, staring at the rejection letter, crying out to God, "Why do they say I'm not enough?" And now, years later, the same institution had come full circle, not just asking him to return, but asking him to lead. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't ego. This was restoration. God had not only vindicated him, he had positioned him. Because when man says no, but heaven has spoken yes, every barrier eventually bends to divine timing. He smiled gently, not because he had won, but because he had grown. He had become the man he was destined to be, not in spite of rejection, but because of it. There's a reason the rejection happened. There's a reason the silence lingered. There's a reason the apology came after the growth, not before. Because had he been accepted back then, he might have blended in, played it safe, fit into the mold. But in the wait, he discovered his own path. In the delay, he learned how to lead. In the silence, he found his voice. And now he stood taller, not just with titles and offers, but with purpose. To you, reading this now, thinking about your own pain, wondering why the door slammed when you were most hopeful, why the people you believed in left you questioning your own worth, why your heart keeps revisiting the day someone told you no. Let this be your sign. That rejection was never meant to break you. It was meant to awaken the undeniable greatness that comfort never could. Just like this young man, your story isn't over. In fact, it hasn't even reached the chapter where God flips the entire script. They will come back. They will realize They will wonder how they missed what was in front of them all along. But by then, you'll be bigger than their validation, because heaven has already validated you. Walk like someone who knows the rejection was a setup. Speak like someone whose value doesn't shrink based on someone else's failure to recognize it. Build like someone who understands. I wasn't made to be accepted by everyone. I was made to become undeniable through divine design. Because soon enough, the same systems, people, and places that overlooked you will need you. And when they come back, not out of pity, but because they finally see your power, you'll smile. And remember this moment. The moment you chose faith over fear, purpose over pain, and growth over resentment. That's when the Rael story begins.